The USS Enterprise-C, an Ambassador-class starship, is one of those starships we know very little about. Apart from its one-off appearance on screen during Star Trek The Next Generation's Yesterday's Enterprise, this USS Enterprise is lost to time. I say that as most of the Enterprise-C's adventures take place in the lost era of the Star Trek universe. What is really the story behind this ship? In today's Star Trek Starships Explained, we dive into the technical history and behind the scenes information on the USS Enterprise-C. Welcome to Trek Central, I'm your host, Captain Jack. If you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. Click the links in the video description to follow us on the social media platform of your choice. Don't forget, you can also join our Discord server to chat about Star Trek with us. If you want more Trek, consider hitting that join button and supporting us directly to get some great perks. While you're watching this video, what would you name an Ambassador-class starship if you were to command one? Comment down below. Please let us know your thoughts on this starship in the comment section below, because if you're talking about Star Trek, we want to hear about it. Okay, engage. Thanks to Aura for sponsoring this video. Look, your privacy matters in the digital world, so you should take steps to protect it. Think back to a time when you trusted a company, then they announced a data breach involving your personal information. We'd all be worried, right? But what actions did you take to respond to this? In 2024, the national public data was breached, exposing 2.9 billion records, including names, phone numbers, addresses, and social security numbers. To make things worse, the hackers release this information for free to whoever wants to find it. This is where Aura comes in. Aura monitors your personal data, including things like your social security number, across billions of data points like the dark web and public court records, to alert you about potential identity theft. But it gets better. Every adult on the account, up to 5, gets 1 million in identity theft insurance to help cover eligible losses and feeds. That's a total of up to 5 million in coverage. Aura has a VPN. The Aura VPN protects your internet connection with military-grade protection. With 100 plus virtual locations, you can access global content safely, either at the comfort of your own home or when you're out exploring the final frontier. Antivirus protection is also included with Aura, meaning your devices are secured from malware, spyware, trojans, ransomware, and more. This is available for Android, PC, and Mac. You can get all of it in one app at one affordable price. Security and protection is vital in the modern digital world, so I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches and brokers. Join me and click the link in the description or go to aura.com/TrekCentral to try 2 weeks for free. That'll be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data is exposed. Once again, a big thanks to Aura for sponsoring this video. Enjoy the rest. Designed as a heavy cruiser, the Ambassador-class starship was in service to Starfleet during the mid to late 24th century. Multiple ships of the class were in service by the 2340s, with some being launched as early as the 2330s. The class consisted of your traditional Starfleet design of a saucer section, engineering section, and warp nacelle layout. If we look at the history of Starfleet starship designs, the Ambassador class could be regarded as the stepping stone between the Excelsior class and the later Galaxy class. In fact, it was in the middle of these ships when it came to the size. The Ambassador class came in at a length of 526 meters, with a width of 283 meters. This meant the class design was around twice the length of a Constitution class. Ship systems and crew facilities were spread out across 36 decks. At the time of launch, the Ambassador class was one of the largest starships that Starfleet had built to date. Designed for exploration, the Ambassador-class starships like the USS Enterprise-C would spend much of their service life outcharting various stellar phenomena, as well as making first contact with new species. Multiple sensor systems were installed into a sensor dome on the underside of a saucer section, directly below the main bridge and in pallets mounted on Deck 2. The main deflector dish was capable of providing long-range scans, which aided exploration. The engines of the Ambassador class benefited from several advances in warp technology, some of which came about during Starfleet's unsuccessful transwarp development program in the 2280s. The Starship class had a top speed of warp 8.4 on the newly redrawn warp scale. These modern engines also made the Ambassador class highly maneuverable, allowing it to easily outperform a Romulan vessel of comparable class. In fact, the Ambassador class was one of the first starships to be designed with a vertical warp core that could be ejected from a section on the ventral hull. Weapon systems wise, the Ambassador class was armed with 11 Type 7 phaser arrays and 2 photon torpedo launchers. The phasers were installed with 5 dorsal and 3 ventral emitters. Regarding defensive systems, standard Starfleet deflector shields were installed on board, allowing for protection from various situations. While large, the crew complement of the ship was at least 125 personnel with a maximum of 530. As it was intended for deep space exploration, an Ambassador class would carry multiple shuttles on board. These were housed in 2 shuttle bays. One was located at the rear of the ship, while the other was in the saucer section. Starfleet began construction of the Ambassador class, which would become the USS Enterprise-C, in the 2320s at Earth Station McKinley. It took over 10 years for the ship to be constructed. Initially, this Ambassador class was not intended to be the Enterprise-C, but with the apparent loss of the Excelsior-class USS Enterprise-B in 2329, it was decided the new Ambassador class would be the 4th Federation starship to bear the name Enterprise. Extended Star Trek canon confirms that the Enterprise-C was commissioned in 2332 at Earth Station McKinley. Captain Rachel Garrett assumed command of the starship within the same year, and therefore the Federation flagship began its adventures. This starship was also fitted with state-of-the-art weapons and defense systems, as most Federation flagships were. Now, the Enterprise-C was the 3rd Ambassador-class starship to be built by Starfleet. Other ships in the class, which were operational and launched before the Enterprise-C, were the USS Adelphi, USS Zhukov, and USS Excalibur. Around 2335 to 2336, the Enterprise-C's first officer, Commander Nigel Holmes, was killed in action during a raid by Klingon renegades. Commander Samir Al-Halak replaced him. The adventures of the Enterprise-C would get worse due to the presence of Al-Halak, as he became involved in a cartel while taking shore leave on Farius Prime. Eventually, the Enterprise-C would catch up with its elusive first officer, as he was captured by the same cartel that he'd become involved with. This cartel posed as Starfleet intelligence operatives and had the starship proceed to the Dravid Nebula cluster. There, the Enterprise discovered a disabled Antoine colony starship, to which they proceeded to offer aid. Upon boarding, the crew located the surviving colonists and transferred them to another Federation starship, the USS Blakely. The Enterprise-C would then continue on the hunt for their missing first officer. Of course, the Enterprise-C is most known for the battle at Narendra 3. The ship would end here, but not before a few timeline shenanigans. In the year of 2344, the Enterprise was en route to Archer 4 when it responded to a distress call from the Klingon outpost on the planet of Narendra 3. The outpost was under attack from the Romulan Star Empire. Under Captain Rachel Garrett's command, the Enterprise responded and arrived at the outpost. Exiting warp saw the Enterprise come under attack by 4 Romulan warbirds. Immediately, the Ambassador-class starship suffered major damage to her warp nacelles and external hull, with only 125 crew members surviving. While the battle raged intensely for several minutes, the Enterprise-C was eventually destroyed, protecting what was left of the Klingons. However, before the ship was destroyed, the detonation of a lone photon torpedo created a temporal rift. This rift threw the Enterprise-C 22 years into a future in which the Federation and the Klingon Empire were at war. Due to the Enterprise-C's displacement in time, the Klingons interpreted the disappearance of the starship as a cowardly withdrawal. As such, they viewed Starfleet and the Federation without honor. Therefore, the peace agreements between the Klingons and the Federation rapidly broke down, eventually causing an all-out war between the 2 galactic powers. Drifting through the temporal rift, the Enterprise-C arrived in this hostile alt history. They immediately encountered their successor, the Galaxy-class USS Enterprise-D, under the command of Captain Jean-Luc Picard. The crew of the Enterprise-C discovered what had happened due to their absence from the battle. Thus, both Enterprise crews realized that the sea needed to return through the rift. However, matters are complicated further. During essential repairs, both starships came under attack from the Klingon forces, with Captain Garrett being killed in action. The last remaining senior officer, Lieutenant Richard Castile, assumed command of the Enterprise-C and prepared to take the ship back through the temporal rift to 2344. Before this happened, the Enterprise-D's tactical officer requested a transfer. Lieutenant Natasha Yar learned from Guinan that if the Enterprise-C successfully repaired the timeline, she would die a meaningless death. Tasha was uncomfortable with this idea and therefore requested a transfer from Captain Picard to the Enterprise-C. Picard understood her request and granted the transfer.
Let's make sure that history never forgets the name Enterprise.
While the Enterprise-D took on 3 Klingon warships, sustaining critical damage, the Enterprise-C finally made it through the temporal rift, resetting the alt timeline history. Arriving back in 2344, the Enterprise-C returned at the same time it had left, therefore engaging the Romulans again, and was eventually destroyed due to the overwhelming firepower of the warbirds. Due to the Enterprise-C sacrificing itself to protect the Klingon outpost, this impressed them. Ultimately, the Enterprise-C's short-lived battle reinforced the relationship between the two powers. The result was an alliance of peace that would last many decades. However, what did complicate matters later down the line was the Enterprise-C survivors. Lieutenant Tasha Yar survived but was captured by the Romulans. She was held prisoner inside a Romulan prison camp where she would give birth to a half-Romulan daughter named Sela. She would become a problem in a few decades, but that's another story for another time. Due to the destruction of the Enterprise-C, Starfleet did not commission another USS Enterprise for nearly 2 decades. This changed in 2363 with the arrival of the Galaxy-class USS Enterprise-D. Star Trek's extended canon tells the story through the Star Trek Online video game. The Enterprise-C was accidentally pulled further into the future when returning to their own timeline. It would arrive in the future in the year of 2409 via an anomaly in the Azure Nebula, therefore restoring the timeline in which the Klingons defeated the Federation in a war. While attempting to return to their own timeline, the Enterprise-C was captured by a race known as the Tholians. The crew were imprisoned and forced to work for the species. The Dominion, who actually invaded the Alpha Quadrant and quickly defeated the Klingon Empire and the other major powers, made this timeline worse, primarily due to the Federation being gone and the Quadrant being in much disarray. With help from other temporal displaced officers, the Enterprise-C escaped and finally returned to its own timeline. This mission is called Temporal Ambassador. There is a story in the extended canon where more crew members escaped the destruction of the Enterprise-C. The only crew members who survived and avoided Romulan capture were Dr. Francis Stewart, 2 security guards, and a shuttle pilot. These ship personnel were assigned to escort the stricken Vulcan Saavik back to her homeworld. Therefore, none of them were on board the Enterprise-C during the Romulan attack, having left the starship in a shuttle many hours earlier. Now, the Ambassador-class would still be in service by the 2360s, with some ships seeing action during the Battle of Wolf 359 and the Klingon Civil War. The class was still in use by 2369, but by the time of the Dominion War, it appears most of them had been replaced. However, with that said, the Star Trek Encyclopedia refers to the USS Exeter serving in the Dominion War in 2374. It is highly likely that the Galaxy-class replaced the Ambassador-class by the later 24th century. If you need a brand new USS Enterprise for a single episode, it's going to be done in a hurry. In reality, the design process of the USS Enterprise-C and the Ambassador-class began 2 years before it would appear on screen. While Andrew Probert was designing the Galaxy-class Enterprise-D, he would think of a lineage of a starship. One of the things that struck him was the differences between Captain Kirk's Enterprise and Picard's Galaxy-class. The producers and Probert had already agreed that the Enterprise-B would be an Excelsior-class, which we would see years later in Star Trek Generations, but the Enterprise-C was completely unknown at this point. Probert did reason that the Enterprise-C would share design elements of both her predecessors and her successors. In the design, Probert wanted there to be evidence that the Ambassador-class had grown from the likes of the Excelsior into the Galaxy-class. Part of his design process involved taking side profiles of the Excelsior-class and then the Galaxy-class and drawing lines to compare them both, especially with the important points such as the saucer section and impulse engines. This design approach formed the basis of the Enterprise-C model, which appeared in the Enterprise-D's conference room. That model did only show a side view. Sadly, Andrew Probert left the Next Generation series before he could explore his ideas further. The MMO video game of Star Trek Online actually features Probert's original Enterprise-C concept design known as the Narendra class. When the Next Generation's Yesterday's Enterprise episode called for the Enterprise-C, more work was needed. As such, Rick Sternbach was tasked with a new design. Rick also agreed that the Ambassador class would be a logical step between the Excelsior class and the Galaxy class. He would even use the initial sketch done by Andrew Probert to inform the designs of what would become the Enterprise-C and the Ambassador class. Once sketches had been completed, Rick passed it over to model maker Greg Jean. As such, the Ambassador class and the USS Enterprise-C was born and would appear in the Next Generation's Yesterday's Enterprise. Fun fact, you can actually fly the Ambassador class in Star Trek Online. So that's the story and technical details of the USS Enterprise-C and the Ambassador-class Starship. What do you think of this starship in the Star Trek universe? Is this one you'd take out for a spin, or do you prefer the Galaxy class? Let us know what you think in the comments below. If you want to keep up to date on the latest Star Trek news, lore, and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media or join our community Discord server. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper, my friends.